Hello, and welcome to Market Brief After Hours, your essential late-day briefing. We are winding down from a highly energetic trading session, and the overall vibe across trading desks has been absolutely electric. The bulls clearly held the upper hand as we wrapped up a major trading month, with technology once again driving key indices to historic milestones.
Today was a truly remarkable session. We saw a powerful convergence of blockbuster corporate earnings, key economic data, and a significant easing of geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, providing a perfect tailwind for risk assets.
Let's kick things off with our key takeaways. If you had to distill today's global market action into the four most critical events for our listeners, what would they be?
First, major global equity indices, particularly in the US and Asia Pacific, scaled fresh record-breaking highs, powered by tech and the expanding AI narrative. Second, oil prices experienced a notable slide, with benchmarks hitting large monthly declines as traders reacted to a potential US-Iran ceasefire extension. Third, we saw mixed economic signals out of North America, highlighted by a surge in the Chicago PMI and slowing wholesale inventory growth in the US. Finally, European markets ended mixed as investors balanced softer inflation in Germany against rising energy-driven prices in Italy.
Let's dig deeper into the domestic picture. U.S. markets really stole the spotlight today with some spectacular milestones. Walk us through the closing numbers for the major indices, rounding them to the nearest whole number.
The U.S. markets wrapped up the month on an incredibly strong note. The tech-heavy Nasdaq composite led the charge, settling up 0.2% to close at 26,973. Meanwhile, the broad market S&P 500 climbed 0.22% to finish the day at 7,580. And the blue-chip Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped 363 points, or 0.72%, to close at 51,032. All three indices hit fresh all-time intraday highs earlier in the session, too.
That is an incredible performance. And this really caps off a stellar month for equity investors, doesn't it?
It does. For the month of May, the Nasdaq recorded an advance of more than 8%. The S&P 500 finished up 5%, while the Dow posted an almost 3% climb. On a weekly basis, the Nasdaq ended higher by more than 2%, the S&P 500 rose more than 1%, and the Dow notched a gain of slightly less than 1%.
How did other North American economic indicators look, including U.S. inventories and Canada's GDP?
U.S. wholesale inventories rose 0.5% in April to $938.6 billion, while the Chicago PMI surged to 62.7, a four-year high. In Canada, first-quarter GDP fell 0.1% annualized to 2.5 trillion Canadian dollars, though economists stress it is not a recession, pointing to solid consumer spending and a projected 0.4% expansion in April.
Let's cross the Atlantic. How did European markets close, and what key economic or geopolitical factors shaped the session?
The Stoxx 600 rose 0.2%. The FTSE 100 closed at 10,434, the CAC 40 at 8,227, the FTSE MIB at 50,037, and the DAX at 25,105. Defense stocks jumped 1% after a drone strike in Romania, with Creotech rising 19%. On the data front, German inflation slowed to 2.6%, Italian inflation rose to 3.2%, and French unemployment fell by 9,000.
Moving further east, what were the main drivers and index moves in the Asia-Pacific region?
South Korea's Kospi hit a record 8,476, driven by Samsung's 5% jump, while Japan's Nikkei 225 surged 2.53% to 66,329. And the topics reached a record 3,957. Elsewhere, Australia's ASX 200 rose 1.62% to 8,731, and the NZX 50 gained 0.3%. However, India's Sensex fell 1.44% to 74,775 on renewed Iranian tensions, and the CSI 300 slid 0.45% to 4,892.
We are going to take a quick break right now. Coming up next, we'll dive into the Forex markets, discuss major currency pairs, highlight key moving average levels, and review today's biggest corporate winners and losers. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Market Brief After Hours. Let's shift our focus to the currency markets and technical analysis. There were some highly technical setups developing today, particularly as major pairs interacted with their moving averages. Let's start with the euro against the US dollar.
The Euro-USD pair had a quiet but technically significant session, closing up 0.11% at 1.1664, trading between 1.1625 and 1.1686. The daily candle formed a small bullish body with a noticeable upper wick. The price is currently interacting closely with the 50-day simple moving average at 1.1666, remaining slightly below the 200-day SMA at 1.1681 and the 100-day SMA at 1.1698. This tightly compressed cluster of moving averages is acting as a formidable overhead barrier, keeping the short-term trend sideways. Momentum remains neutral as price action oscillates. Immediate resistance is located at the session high of 1.1686, with initial support seen at the session low of 1.1625.
What about the British pound? It seemed to have a more decisive recovery.
Indeed, GBP USD closed up 0.17% at 1.3467, trading between 1.3408 and 1.3485. The strong bullish candle closed near its highs. Price pushed back above the 200-day SMA at 1.3423 and the 50-day SMA at 1.3447, and is now testing resistance near the 100-day SMA at 1.3477. The broader trend remains in a corrective phase, but the pair has found solid support in the 1.3300–1.3400 region. Immediate resistance is at the session high of 1.3485, and holding above the session low of 1.3408 keeps the recovery sequence intact.
Turning to the commodity currencies, the New Zealand dollar was a standout performer today. What drove that chart?
The NZD-USD pair surged 0.91% to close at 0.5989, trading between a low of 0.5928 and a high of 0.5994. The strong bullish daily candle reflected sustained buying pressure, signaling renewed upside momentum. The pair is trading well above all key moving averages, with the 50-day SMA at 0.5859, the 100-day SMA at 0.5896, and the 200-day SMA at 0.5838, providing a very supportive foundation. The short-term trend has firmly shifted to the upside, breaking aggressively out of its sideways range. Immediate resistance is located at 0.5994, with support at the previous breakout area of 0.5940.
And what about the Australian dollar? Did it follow a similar path?
Yes, AUD-USD closed up 0.35% at 0.7188, trading between 0.7149 and 0.7201. The candle closed near its highs, signaling a resumption of buying interest. The pair remains comfortably above the 50-day SMA at 0.7106, the 100-day SMA at 0.7047, and the 200-day SMA at 0.6810, highlighting an entrenched medium to long-term uptrend. The market has found a reliable floor near the 50-day average. Immediate resistance is marked by the session high of 0.7201, while initial support lies at 0.7149.
Now the Swiss franc, how did the USD-CHF pair behave?
USD-CHF drifted lower, closing down 0.44% at 0.7804, after trading between 0.7847 and 0.7795. The candle has a bearish body with a close near the lows, showing renewed selling pressure. Price slipped back below the 100-day SMA at 0.7831 and continues to face overhead pressure from the 50-day SMA at 0.7865 and the 200-day SMA at 0.7908. This sequence of lower highs maintains a distinct bearish bias, with immediate support at the session low of 0.7795.
Before we check out corporate stocks, how did gold wrap up today's trade?
Gold closed up 1.13% at $4,547, forming a bullish engulfing candle between $4,489 and $4,595. While it remains below the 50-day SMA at $4,630 and the 100-day SMA at $4,795, it stays above its 200-day SMA at $4,375, keeping the long-term bullish posture intact. Resistance is now at $4,595, with support at the psychological $4,500 mark.
Now let's pivot to the corporate arena. Today was a highly active day for individual stocks, with some massive double-digit moves. Let's start with the big winners in the tech space.
We have to start with Dell Technologies. Shares surged nearly 33% to record their best day ever after the company reported a first-quarter beat on the top and bottom lines and raised its full-year guidance. We also saw Micron Technology and Qualcomm rise 5% and 3% respectively, extending their massive monthly runs. In May, Micron jumped almost 88%, while Qualcomm rose close to 40%. Additionally, NetApp closed up over 22% after beating fourth-quarter revenue expectations with $1.95 billion, and NextPower surged over 14% after agreeing to buy Prevalon Energy for up to $365 million in cash and stock.
What about the retail space? It seems today brought some harsh realities for several household brands.
Retail took a beating. The Gap fell more than 15% after reporting that first-quarter comparable sales rose 2%, weaker than the 2.93% consensus, and cutting its full-year sales outlook. American Eagle Outfitters plummeted over 11% after its comparable sales growth of 8% missed the 8.48% consensus. And Costco Wholesale closed down over 3% despite better-than-expected earnings, as analysts expressed concern over moderating membership growth.
What is the general conclusion we can draw from these market movements as we close out the week?
The overarching theme is one of resilient growth, particularly in technology and AI-related infrastructure, which continues to act as the primary engine for this bull market. While retail data suggests some consumer fatigue, the broader macroeconomic picture remains solid, supported by robust business activity, as highlighted by the surge in the Chicago PMI. The cooling of energy prices and potential progress on geopolitical diplomacy in the Middle East should keep a supportive floor under equities, provided that inflation continues to moderate globally. A very busy day to close out an action-packed month. Thank you for listening. If you find this useful, please follow Market Brief after hours. We will see you next week.